Hello and welcome to the Mason Network. We are here with Jim Lepore, who is a dance professor at George Mason University. Hello, Professor Lepore. How are you today?
Nice to meet you, Bilal.
Nice to meet you too. So, Professor Lepore, if you could start out by telling us what it is you do here at this great university.
I teach dance, and I've been teaching dance here for 15 years. And I teach modern dance, technique classes, which are referred to euphemistically as dance classes.
Okay.
And I teach comp, and I teach improvisation, and I teach anatomy, body awareness courses. And I teach a lot of classes that are derivative of Afro-Cuban dance.
Okay.
An Afro-Cuban dance class, an Afro-Latino class, which is listed as Afro-Latino in the books, and it's basically a salsa class, a social dance class.
So for those of us who don't know what modern dance is, if you can go ahead and explain a little bit what
modern dance is. Dance that's presented on stage. It's preparation for a concert dance situation environment. It's derivative of ballet. It emerged in the early 20th century and owes a lot to the lines and the alignment that came out of ballet, but it was a sort of modern response to it, in that the dancers at the time who created modern dance were frustrated with the limitations of the ballet vocabulary. And one of the hallmarks of early modern dance was the fact that they danced in bare feet and not without ballet shoes.
So if you could tell us, I understand you take students to Cuba. Is that
yes, that's okay. So when I arrived here in 1997, I had just begun taking students from the University of Washington, where I was teaching prior to coming here, and I continued to operate that program here for 5 consecutive years. We would take students; they sign up for Dance 418, and they get 3 credits to go to Cuba for between 11 and 14 days. And we literally dance our butts off there. I mean, we do not stop. We take formal dance classes in the morning that include a class in call and response singing, and then we take a short break and then take a social dance class, which is usually a salsa-related genre. And then in the late afternoon and evenings, we go out dancing at all sorts of venues that are available that all have live music.
Right.
Or 90% of them have live music.
So how did this opportunity come about? Do you work with an institute in Cuba, or?
I work with a dance company based in Santiago, Cuba, and that company is called Kutumba, or Ballet Folklorico Kutumba. And I discovered Kutumba in 1995 on a trip there with a group from Canada, in fact, from Toronto. And at the time, nobody in the States was leading any trips to that part of Cuba. There were dance and music programs going on in Havana, but I wanted to go to Santiago for a number of reasons, some of which have to do with the fact that it's a little less touched by the industrialized nations. So it's a much more Caribbean city, is how Cubans refer to it. It's also the birthplace of Cuban son, which is what we call salsa. And all of that music that's played acoustically and sung by troubadours, is still very, very vital there. And it's for me, it was a dream come true. It was a beautiful colonial city that has live music everywhere, and everybody loves to dance.
Right.
So it was like, you know, visiting another planet, basically. So I organized my first trip there in 1996, continued here for 5 years, and then President Bush put restrictions in place that discontinued those programs for up until last year, in fact. Last June 2011 was the first time I had taken a group in 6 years. And we went in June and we went again in January. And for as much as I talk the program up, it always exceeds my expectations of those of the students. They just don't believe that we're going to be dancing in the streets and we're going to be dancing every day and we're going to dance from morning till they go to bed and they're going to drop and wake up and do the same thing over and over again. But it's a contagion over there that's really, really special. Yeah.
So to talk about the place, which is definitely special to you, you obviously didn't go there for a period of 6 to 7 years, correct?
I went without students.
Okay.
Yes, I went to visit because researchers can go, and since this is an academic specialization for me, I was able to get a U.S. license to visit.
So do you foresee any future distractions for the program, or how do you?
Well, the upcoming election could throw a wrench into that. We'll see. Republicans tend to follow a much harder line vis-a-vis relations with Cuba, and I think the clock can be turned back again. Right. I mean, this is cold. We're talking about Cold War diplomacy here, which is absurd, but it gets votes.
Right.
And so I don't think we're out of the woods in terms of this kind of academic endeavor being here 4 or 5 years from now. One never knows.
Right. Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point with politics and dance. What I want to ask you is, how do you feel dance and society go together? This is what is so remarkably illuminating about going to Cuba is that you witness another model where dance is an important personal expression for the everyday person. Right.
And I'm not sure about your specific background, but I know that the Indian subcontinent is one of the it's one of the dancing centers on this earth. There's a lot of dance going on there, and last week I'm always reminded during International Week of how important it is that you've got the Afghan Student Association and PSA and ISA, and they're all trying to. They always finish in the top 3, but those are special places on this planet, and sometimes if you grow up in this culture, it's hard to imagine a different model, and that's why I love taking students to Cuba, just to see that there's another way. This can be part of your life. This can be part of an activity that you continue for the rest of your life. This is, it contains in it all of the wonderful reasons that we love the arts. It's expressive, it's direct, you have personal input into it, it makes you feel like you expand, like it's bigger than life, and you become part of something larger than yourself.
Well, definitely. I mean, me coming from a background, like you said, arts are definitely important ways of expression, because without arts you can't really raise your voice, but through arts you can. So how do you see arts in America? Is our society become so diverse that we don't really have a culture, mainstream culture, where we have subcultures? What do you see there?
We have the danger, to me it seems, is that we tend to commercialize the arts in a way that means that they often need to be turning a profit in order to exist.
Right.
And this is a harsh reality. The arts shouldn't be inaccessible, and my God, nobody, or hardly anybody, really makes money in the arts. I think it's important to keep them available to people as a means of expression, and I do think we could do a better job of making them available. And a lot of these forms require something that is good for us as a civilization, and that means that you have to come together in reality, not virtually.
Right.
We're not; these aren't communities set up on the internet. These are communities that need to be physically present.
Right.
And the arts encourage that, and that's a good thing. I take some solace in seeing young people your age graduating and moving toward urban centers instead of away from them.
Right.
And this seems to be the reversal of a sort of demographic trend of the past numerous decades, where we were spreading out to the point where we never got together except to go shopping. Now this is kind of cool that you have urban areas such as Washington D.C., certainly New York City. Oh my God! And when I go there, I'm looking around, going, "Wow, everybody's so young.
Right.
Everybody wants to be somewhere where other people are." And if you have that dynamic, then you have the possibility of the sort of interactive arts experience that music and dance
and a culture rising up
tend to provide. Yeah,
definitely. And then my final question for you today would be, where do you see arts headed in America? We talked about a few problems that we have with consumerism and that thing. How would you like to see it heading, and what are you doing to take it towards that?
Well, this is we have this discussion frequently, and I don't know what direction it's going in. Modern dance is certainly holding on by a thread, and that has a lot to do with the fact that state-sponsored art forms like modern dance are competing against everybody else for the pot of dollars that's diminishing because people don't want to pay taxes. Right. This began in the 1980s. All of a sudden, we're not going to pay taxes any longer. So I'm not sure what's going to happen to modern dance as an art form. I hope it adapts, and I hope it begins to absorb other styles of dance that would make it more exciting for young people to become not only interested in, but perhaps invested in. The kind of excitement that's generated, for instance, at the dance competition for I-Week. I mean, the modern dance faculty goes there and looks at it and goes, wow, how are they doing this?
Right.
What do we need to do to generate this kind of enthusiasm? The fact that breakdancing is still popular around the country with young kids is a good indication that dance as an activity is still alive. Now, whether we can harness that interest and energy and manage to change the trajectory of modern dance into something that's more relevant to people's lives is a challenge for the upcoming generation. But I certainly see, again, I look at Cuba as a model. It seems to make a difference in terms of having a public that's willing to pay for a dance performance and sit and watch it. It's more likely that you have that public, if you have that public already participating in dance in some way in their own lives. Right. And probably then a solution would be to keep encouraging Americans to dance. I mean, this is an issue, and one of the taboos in this culture is men don't dance. They're like if they're macho, they don't dance. Whereas it's the absolute opposite of that in Cuba. If you're macho, you dance. That's how you express your machismo. So let's hope that the model from South Asia and Africa is the one that ascends here, as opposed to the one that said that men should not be articulate movers.
Right. Well, one final question that came up in my mind that I want to ask you is, well, you described the passion that you see in South Asia and Africa. There's a heritage and soul that transforms into that dance, and that's why it's so powerful and wonderful. How do we get that into American dance? Because obviously consumerism doesn't have that type of...
Well, I think there's an experience that people have when they're dancing, especially if they sync up with the music. And I referred to enumerating adjectives a couple minutes ago, and I said expansive, and that's what it is. It allows you to become bigger than yourself when you're dancing. Right? You get synced up with the music. Maybe it's you and a partner having a kind of communication that you can't have with words. I think there are ways in which these experiences, and this is what the arts does, the arts provide us with a sort of stronger sensory experiences, which is really, that's what life is we're sensing things, right?
Right.
And if we can vitalize that and enliven it, then we feel more alive ourselves, right? And so I think that I think there's a way to do it, and it has to do with keeping it accessible and encouraging people to do it and making it part of our education. All educators know that you can't put kids at a desk all day long. They're going to stop learning. You have to have them moving. You have to give them other things to do. And the body has an intelligence, and that needs to be fed. And we have to recognize that as a culture. And what do you think about it?
What do I think?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely think as dance and culture in general is the backbone of society, and when that is missing, tarnished, or oppressed, it's going to show up in society where it's going to be a lesser. We're going to do worse economically, socially. So I think culture is the backbone of society, and if that monster isn't fed and it isn't rising up, we're going to see a decline in the quality of life that we see in this country. And as an example, England is a great example of keeping your culture alive, where they speak English, but they do some with Shakespeare and all that stuff. That's a good example,
because I was thinking of Ireland,
right,
where they sing.
Right.
They get together and sing. They don't dance. It doesn't have to be dance. I think it needs to be something, though, that feels like it binds the community together.
Right, and that's an example in the Western Hemisphere is England, Ireland. Definitely with other cultures, in like South Asia, those cultures or Cuba, they're kept in a non-diverse atmosphere, so it's easier for them to expand. It doesn't really evolve into something special, but definitely in America, we have the great writers with like Edgar Allan Poe and all that stuff. We need to teach that to kids in school and teach American literature
and get them excited about
right.
it. Make it contemporary. Well, I just saw my son perform in a festival it was celebrating Spanish language. He's at a bilingual school, and they did a rap.
Right.
They were into it. These are fourth graders, and I thought, brilliant. Get them doing something that speaks to them, that gets them moving, gets them singing, gets them experiencing the arts in a way that feels contemporary.
Right, and mainstream, I believe mainstream, everything that's done mainstream, it's not just for the glamour, it has to have a message behind it, where there's some sort of social message that's going behind that, whether it's about love or peace or family relationships or with the spouse or something. Something needs to be behind that piece of art, whether it's dance or art, TV, movies, and if you have that, you're gonna do
And this is a whole other discussion here that we could sail off into. But in any event, it's also important for Americans to get out and visit other places, right? I mean, you know, because you lived in Canada, you grew up in Pakistan. Yeah. I'm sure you've been back to Pakistan.
Yes, I went back last year for 3 months.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that sometimes Americans are fed a diet of like we're the best and everybody wants to be like us, to the extent that it actually damages their curiosity. Exactly. And you've got to go out and look. You know, there are ways of that people have constructed in order to make life meaningful for a long, long time.
Right.
And it's worth finding out about that.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, with media in general in America, the media is not directed at one specific target where it's goal-wise. The media is not interested in representing people's thoughts or feelings. It's all about glamour and the biggest story and all that stuff. You don't see that in other countries where they have a rich culture. But it was great meeting you, Professor.
Nice meeting you, Bilal. Yeah. Good luck with your
project.
project.
Thank you.
Yeah. I hope you can use some of that.
Definitely.